Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to When Tomorrow Comes. This is ICNEW's regular look at the world of planning and development. This week we're going to be talking about affordable housing. We've got a special guest speaker here to join us today. Welcome Craig Lutman from L&Q. How are you doing?
Hi, good, thank you. Yeah, good to be here.
Good, welcome. We're also joined by the author of this week's regular email, Andrew Gale. How are you doing, Andrew?
I'm good, Dan. Good to see you.
See you too. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Andrew to give us a bit of a summary about what he was talking about in this week's Wednesday email.
Thanks, Dan, and I'd add my thanks to Craig for joining today's vlog. So hopefully we can have a good discussion. The email this week was focused around delivery of affordable housing, which in a normal world is a fairly difficult thing. Layer in the pandemic and the financial implications of that and Brexit, and for good measure, a set of planning reforms. And this week we were kind of exploring whether the outcome of this will be an increased supply of affordable housing or not, because the government have stated in their documentation around reforming the planning system that they want to increase the overall supply of housing and also the relative supply of affordable housing as well. And at the same time, they have, perhaps unsurprisingly for a Conservative government, have unashamedly sort of looked to tilt the balance more towards home ownership models rather than perhaps rented models. So we very quickly in the article looked at some of the planning reforms and provide a comment on whether we think that's a good thing or whether it's going to be a difficult measure for supplying housing. So, and we could explore more of that with Craig today with his views. So one of the shorter term things that the government have done is looking at increasing the threshold above which on-site affordable housing would be required on a scheme, and this is designed to kickstart, I guess, overall housing supply. Most planning policies require schemes of over 10 units to be providing an element of affordable, and the proposal is to raise that threshold to 50 or 60 dwellings, and above which affordable housing requirements would kick in. And I think some of our clients have welcomed this. It will help the viability of certain schemes. But evidence research published only last week by the Local Government Association said that if these rules had been in place for the last 5 years, there would have been 30,000 less affordable housing units delivered. So there's clearly an issue there on delivery, and some of those issues will probably be felt most acutely in maybe some of the home counties where they typically have smaller housing schemes and they require or rely on affordable coming forward from those units. The government have said that they will make up for that shortfall, and one way in which they're suggesting that will be done is through a new infrastructure levy, which rolls or abolishes Section 106 and the current CIL arrangements and provides a standard levy that would be placed on sort of market sale housing to backfill and pay for the affordable housing provision. And that's, on one level, interesting. It appears straightforward and simple, and I think would be welcomed in that sense. But there are, I guess, some unanswered questions about how that will work in practice, because the contribution will be taken from the end sale price of those units. So there's a lot of distance between when you're going in for planning and when you're selling those units. And then finally, to kick off from me, that there were announcements of a headline-grabbing 12 billion funding package from Robert Jenrick last month for the next round of affordable housing programme, and that comes, I think, with some welcome requirements for improved build quality and modern methods of construction. But it also talks about different types of affordable product. And again, my sense is there's a fair degree of uncertainty in how those will work through in details, and I know a lot of people are working up their bids already for that funding, and there's a lot of questions that are unanswered in terms of how they put their best foot forward in that regard. So there's lots obviously we could talk about in terms of the wider planning reforms as well, but they were just some ideas to get discussion kicked off then.
Okay, Andrew, thanks very much for that summary. Craig, what's your take on this? What are the biggest questions you need to be answered to provide you with a degree of certainty in providing affordable housing going forward?
Well, actually, you've just taken the key word, certainty. In terms of general observations, in terms of the consultation and what the overall ambitions about doing more and doing it quicker, and lots of positive things in the consultation. But yeah, your question on certainty around delivery of affordable homes into what is an uncertain market going forward, for all the reasons that Andrew just mentioned, is really critical. So from a Homes England GLA perspective, we understand the prospectus is coming out probably in January now, for submissions in March. So housing associations, for-profit providers and local authorities will be busily working on their business plans to work out what they're going to be including in for their bids. But it's a little bit of a finger in the air at the moment, if I'm honest with you, because there's the first homes, so the role that has in terms of delivery. We understand that's potentially outside of the grant offer, but nonetheless that's there, so that will put pressure on overall numbers. There's the new shared ownership lease and form of tenure, which again, housing associations working through their own viability in terms of what that means for them as a business, in terms of the initial equity that you get in from a sale, but also the ongoing management and maintenance obligations for the first 10 years and what that does to your cash flows. And then the role of the infrastructure levy and where and how the affordable numbers settle on a particular scheme. And as things currently stand, the big question mark is actually if on a particular project you determine there is affordable to be delivered at the end of the job, it's potentially too late. So what happens to that contribution? Does it go to the local authority who then hold on to it, pool it, and then try and deliver it somewhere? So there's quite a few questions around the process that we do need to resolve fairly quickly if, say, bidders, either within the programme or just in terms of their own business plans outside the programme, can plan for the future. Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like there's a huge degree of uncertainty out there. I mean, the number of planning reforms that have been proposed are so numerous. Are they going to restrict supply of affordable homes or give you more? Andrew, what's your sort of sense on that?
I mean, Dan, I think there's aspects of the reforms which I think if they're followed through, could help certainly. The speeding up of local plans, preparation of local plans, the categorisation of land into the growth, renewal, and protect categories, I think will give more certainty. And I guess this outline in principle granted through the local plan again will offer certainty and speed. But I guess our experience of where most local authorities are with their local plans, that seems quite some way off. And my fear is there's going to be a short-term hiatus while local authorities move to this new style local plan, if that's where we end up going, and just at a time when we need to be having a bit more certainty about where and when affordable housing can be delivered.
Yeah, well, I mean, the government's been very focused on home ownership. Surely there are other forms of tenure that will sort of provide greater numbers of affordable homes. Craig, do these affect viability in any sort of significant way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've already mentioned the shared ownership model. So the current model was tried and tested. We know how that works. We know the customers know how it works. Business plans are kind of built off the back of that. So yeah, someone like L&Q and lots of other RPs, we have that kind of mixed economy where we do private sale, but we do that to invest funds into delivering more affordable homes. So if you assume the shared ownership more or less washes its face, the profit you're making from effectively 2 private sale goes into delivering 1 affordable unit. But actually those business plans are again, big question marks on, because you're no longer getting necessarily the profit from private because of where we are with the market. You're not necessarily getting certainty on the shared ownership revenue going forward. And therefore there's increased pressure on how on earth you deliver the affordable tenures. So yeah, there's a whole raft of things that we're looking at, but you can't necessarily shy away from the fact that as much as the government are understandably kind of pro home ownership and forms of home ownership, whether it's kind of rent to buy type models, that kind of the pressure and the underlying pressure in the country to deliver more social rent. So the positive thing is that is now recognised by government, and so it's not necessarily just everything all about home ownership, but I think it was Christ were talking around kind of like 90,000 homes a year needed for social rent or affordable rent of some form. So the question mark now is if housing associations say you need more grant for shared ownership to make it work on the new model, with the pressure there is on, let's say, first homes and the role that has to play, is the amount of grant you're going to need to deliver the very core business over here, more affordable social homes. That 12 billion sounds like a big number, but potentially doesn't go anywhere near as far as it needs to.
That's actually anticipated one of my questions about the 12 billion. It sounds like a hell of a lot of money, but if it's not going to go very far, is there a role for institutional investment? I mean, there's sort of private equity pension funds looking to get involved in affordable housing at all.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, the grant rates potentially will be higher than previous years, but it's that kind of risk reward thing. So that lack of certainty means actually that gets factored into your bids, into your offer. So I think that the pressure is absolutely on how you can do more with different partners. So whether it's environmental, social governance type new funding models, which is very much in the fore at the moment, absolutely. And for our sector, we can play straight into that in terms of how we run our social mission, what we're trying to achieve, and the credentials of the business. So there's already been some fairly big headlines on different RPs securing very good term debt on those basis, really. So absolutely, there's more we can do there. More partnerships, more joint ventures, and effectively, it's how you can, where you would need to be, whether it's with partners or indeed a kind of shared risk reward over the long term. So grant is welcome, absolutely. But if there's more of an opportunity to share risk and reward, so in the good times you're sharing more profit, in the downturn you're sharing that risk and therefore doing more, potentially changing tenures, doing more affordable, then that's where we need to get it to, really. That more kind of long-term partnership, shared risk, shared reward, as opposed to potentially a binary, here's your grant, now go and deliver relationship. So I think, again, my sense is Homes England, GLA and so on have kind of responded to that in terms of feedback from previous programmes. But I think there's more we can do there in terms of those wider long-term partnerships, for sure.
Yeah, and Andrew, presumably local authorities are going to be much more appreciative of these sorts of longer-term relationships.
Yeah, I should certainly think so, and I think the providers of affordable housing are incredibly well placed, because they don't just develop these houses and then walk away. They maintain those communities and have ongoing relationships with those communities. And obviously, the planning reforms talk a lot about better engagement and digital engagement, and we know from the work we've done on various estate renewal projects that the local authorities and the likes of L&Q are very much leading that sort of understanding of how you engage with communities and are using digital forums and what have you to do that. So I think like I say, probably very well placed to work with local authorities and other partners to realise new developments.
Okay. Gents, that's been absolutely fascinating. I think that's all we've got time for today. It'll be very interesting to see how the proposed planning reforms emerge into actual substantial policy that we can all respond to and get our teeth into in a bit more detail, I think. I'd like to thank Craig for joining us. Thank you very much, Craig. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I would say it's been a pleasure as well.
Thanks. And Andrew, thanks again for your email and for your insights.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.
Cheers, bye.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Goodbye.
Cheers, bye.